This is the 2025 Toyota Tacoma Trailhunter, new with the 4th generation Toyota Tacoma. And it actually shares the top trim spot with the TRD Pro, which used to stand alone by itself. They also have a similar starting price of around $63,000, which is more than double the price of a base Tacoma. Now the difference is, whereas the TRD Pro and its Fox shocks is more of a high-speed desert runner, the Trailhunter, with popular Toyota aftermarket accessory providers Old Man Emu and ARB, is actually more of a slow overlanding rock crawler for around the same money as the TRD Pro. So if previously you thought that maybe you were a TRD Pro type of person, well, maybe it's time to check out if the Trailhunter might be a better choice for you. So under the hood of the Trailhunter is the iForce Max engine. That is a turbocharged 2.4-liter 4-cylinder hybrid powertrain that's also found in the TRD Pro Tacoma and a variety of other Toyota models. However, there is one big distinct difference in the Trailhunter compared to other vehicles in the Toyota lineup equipped with the iForce Max motor. Now, normally it's rated for 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque, which is a ton of torque. However, you have a horsepower loss here in the Trailhunter, and here's why. If you come over here to the side of the vehicle, you might notice that this vehicle is in fact equipped with a fresh air intake or a snorkel here on the side. And because it's equipped with this, you lose 3 horsepower, and that goes the same for the 4Runner version of the Trailhunter. Now, 3 horsepower isn't the end of the world. Obviously, it's really not even noticeable. It's just important to point out in terms of the total facts and figures on paper specifications, there's technically a 3 horsepower loss here in the Trailhunter model. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the engine bay and see what's going on in there. The snorkel itself actually runs through this fender and then goes right into your intake here, which is actually a performance washable filter. They even have a sticker here on the top of the hood to let you know, so that you can go ahead and wash, reuse it, and where you can order a new replacement should it come time for your air filter. As you take a look at the rest of the engine bay, notice that there's no real extra pretty covers in here. Toyota left everything pretty bare bones. You have your hybrid system here in the top left, the motor smack dab in the middle there. It's mounted straight, not transverse or anything like that. And the keen eye of you may have noticed that there is in fact no 12-volt battery here. That's because that has been relocated underneath the back seat in our double cab. Now, as far as the rest of the features for this vehicle, you're looking at an 8-speed automatic transmission that is paired with a 2-speed transfer case for 4-wheel drive. Standard driving modes for the Trailhunter is going to be 2-wheel drive, but it does have the option to kick it into 4 high and 4 low, along with a variety of different drive modes that you can use depending on the situation that you're in. You also get an electronically locking rear differential, which you can go ahead and hit the button for in case you need it for getting up specific hills. So from that perspective, you have quite a capable vehicle here. And obviously that is a lot of horsepower and a lot of torque, especially for a Tacoma, when traditionally people who would look at these vehicles would usually consider them more so on the underpowered side. You have lots of power here, obviously both with the turbo and with the hybrid system. What's interesting is you also get a lot of towing capacity, slightly less than what you can get in other Tacoma models. Usually the off-road models like the TRD Pro and the Trailhunter do sacrifice towing capacities. In this case, you're looking at about 6,000 pounds towing capacity, which is still really, really good when you consider a lot of other smaller vehicles tend to be around 3,500 pounds. You have a lot of options here if you wanted to take a, let's say, a trailer with you while you're overlanding. Now, moving on to the other specifications. The EPA-rated fuel economy for this is around 18 city, around 25 highway, and I think it's like 22, 23 combined. I hate to say this, but my experience with this vehicle so far, driving it around town in Phoenix and up to northern Arizona here, I've only been in the 15s in terms of total miles per gallon, and that has been pretty disappointing. I've only seen it move a tenth up or down throughout driving the vehicle, and even when I filled it up with a full tank before heading up north here, it only showed me around 231 miles of range, which to me, for a vehicle that's designed to be the overlanding vehicle, I want more range. It has a fairly sizable tank of around 18 miles per gallon, and even with the hybrid system you'd hope it kick in, but obviously the minute that turbo spools up, you are spending lots of gas, and so a lot of that kind of goes out the window. So theoretically, according to the EPA, you can eke out more fuel economy I just haven't had that experience personally, and you may need to carry some extra jerry cans with you if you go off-roading or overlanding, or depend on some additional resources, or just be careful about how far you actually end up driving out for your overlanding trip. But with that, that's a quick look underneath. It's fairly stout, no problems accelerating uphill, 0 to 60 probably in the low 7-second range, but overall I think it's a pretty awesome powertrain for this vehicle. So next, let's talk about the exterior, and then we'll talk about the underneath. But before we get into the specifics of the Trailhunter, I do want to talk about this color. This awesome color you see here is bronze oxide metallic, and it's not exclusive to the Trailhunter, but it is a new Toyota color. And the reason I like it is because sometimes it looks green, sometimes it looks bronze, and sometimes in really, really bad, questionable lighting, it even might look tan in certain instances. And so I think it offers a really interesting color combination, especially when you combine that with the Trailhunter specific bronze accents. Now, even though this is a Trailhunter just like the 4Runner Trailhunter, they do have some similarities, but there also are quite a few differences that might determine which one you might want to go with. Now, one thing they do share is actually right here, and that is the fresh air intake, or the snorkel as some people might call it. Obviously, this improves your waterfording capability. But what it also does that you don't hear talked about as much is it sounds incredible, especially if you have the passenger window down. This thing has a ton of intake and induction noise for the engine, but you also get a ton of turbo flutter that you can hear as the blow off and wastegate and all that are kicking in for your turbo. So it's incredibly exciting to hear as you're driving this thing down the road. And if anything, it just makes me giggle most of the time. Now, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the front. Again, I want to remind you, we're talking about the exterior, and then we'll talk about what's going on underneath, suspension, ground clearance, etc. in a second. When you take a look at the front here, we have first of our bronze accents, and this is a popular thing for a lot of the more specialized Toyota models. You get the heritage style badging in the front, which I really appreciate, but just below that, as you can see tucked into this small window here, is actually a factory provided light bar. Now, there are some stipulations for the use case of the light bar, and that is the fact that the light bar can only be turned on if you already have your brights on, as in your headlight brights, and then you can turn on your light bar. However, you may have noticed there's additional lighting here in the front, like these Rigid Industries selectable fog lights. You cannot have the fog lights and the light bar on at the same time. You have to pick or choose. Now, while you have your regular headlights on, you can also use the fog lights. In this case, they're these really cool selectable fog lights, like I said, from Rigid Industries, and they can be switched between amber and white. I think white is more usable, but if you just want the truck to look cool during the day while you're driving, but have your headlights on to be respectful while you're driving through the trails, I think the amber looks awesome and just kind of gives it a more rugged looking approach, kind of similar to the middle lights that you would find in the Raptor, for example. Some other cool features on the front for accessories: you do have a camera, and this works with a variety of other camera systems throughout the truck to give you a cool look and basically be able to tell where you want to put the truck while off-roading, and just have a better sense for the wheels and all that type of stuff. It even helps with parking, for example. So that's all great stuff to keep in mind. As we move to the side here, we also have the Trailhunter specific headlights. Now, I previously had the 4Runner Trailhunter, which I highly recommend you check out that video. What was interesting is that one had two different headlights. One said Trailhunter, one had the crosshair. In this case, it's actually Trailhunter, the letters spelled out on both sides, which I thought was kind of an interesting departure. As we come to the wheel wells on the side of the truck here, you have these big, massive fender flares that are about 3 to 4 inches wide, similar to the ones that you'd find on the TRD Pro. You also get the iForce Max badge. And then under here, I won't talk about too much of the suspension, saving that for the underneath, but you do have these 18-inch bronze wheels with kind of that retro style Toyota badge in the middle, and they're wrapped in these Goodyear Wrangler Territory tires, which I believe are 33-inch tires. And these are just awesome looking tires. And obviously it comes out of the box ready to roll with these. You also have lots of sidewall protection here, as you can see, and they have a pretty nice pattern as well. So these are not beadlock capable, but they are JRL certified wheels, which is awesome to see, and they'll definitely have no problem for some minor trails. As we continue down here, you have these power adjustable mirrors with more of those cameras integrated, and even integrated turn signals. You have a massive Trailhunter badge both here and on the passenger side that I love to see. You also get this chassis mounted rock rail that you can see is incredibly long. One of the longest, I think, chassis mounted rock rails ever fitted to a vehicle, and here's why. One of the differences here is obviously the Trailhunter only offered with the double cab Tacomas, but you can actually option for the 5-foot or the 6-foot bed bed for the Trailhunter, whereas the TRD Pro is only available with the 5-foot bed. Now what that means is you have a significantly longer truck here. Once you start equipping it with all of those components, you can haul more overlanding gear, but that obviously changes some of the characteristics of it. You now have a much longer vehicle, which feels significantly harder to park because it has a worse turning radius, and therefore you need a longer rock rail, not just to cover the double cab, but also to get the extra room here for the bed before it gets to the actual rear wheel. So kind of an interesting comparison. Lastly, I also want to point out that you do get tinted windows here in the back, keyless entry, of course, on the front doors, and then these fun 3 sort of fins on the top for your radios and antenna systems. As we come back to the bed, here's obviously where the big differences are between the 4Runner Trailhunter and the Tacoma Trailhunter. So obviously you get a bed. It comes with these cool LED lights here on the exterior of the bed that actually light up almost like entry-exit lights that you can use with the vehicle. So as you can see, they come on there, they help illuminate things. It could just make it a little bit easier, especially if you often find yourself in dark places while camping. And you can also see we have this beefcake steel ARB sport rack here on the back. So obviously I don't need to explain to you what all this does, but it's an already out of the box helpful tool that can maybe make it a little bit easier to carry your gear, not to mention the fact that it makes the truck just look that much cooler. Similar setup here with the wide body fender flares in the rear and even the same wheel and tire package. But then here in the back, I like the way that they did this. Now, as an overlanding off-road version of the Tacoma, it's important to have good approach departure angles and even good ground clearance, and they really tried to fit that theme. You can see here on the back we have this solid ARB steel bumper, which is wonderful to see, but you might notice the way it nicely tucks underneath the truck. So obviously that improves the departure angles. You still have these ARB tow hooks actually front and rear to help with either recovery, and you have lots of ground clearance here underneath. So that's lovely to see. One of the biggest downsides to trying to off-road any sort of pickup truck is always the bed overhang. So anything you can do to minimize that is great. Another thing I want to mention is while you're looking at the back here, the keen eye of you may have noticed that there's actually no exhaust system coming out the back. I'll explain that more once we get to the underneath, but you do have a full-size spare tire. Obviously you have the option to tow up to 6,000 pounds. You have all of your plugins back here. And now I want to talk about the tailgate, which has some cool features. Another camera here in the back, obviously a backup camera, which helps for reverse parking, but also while on the trails. You also get a nice key light, which is helpful for just, again, figuring out where things are in the dark. Nice Trailhunter badge, but you also get a power tailgate. Now, of course, just about every truck manufacturer has offered some sort of dropping tailgate, right? You've seen that before, but this one is actually powered up and down. So you push the button again, and the tailgate itself raises. And if that's not enough, you can actually use the key, and the key itself can even drop the tailgate. So it's pretty obviously very accessible as a regularly used vehicle. I do want to point out that this vehicle in particular does have the optional spray-in bed liner, so this isn't how it comes standard from the factory, but it is something that you yourself can option for your particular Tacoma Trailhunter. The exciting stuff is actually over here in the driver's side, in my opinion. So right here, you may see the words compressor on this bottom plate. And if I lift this up, you can see that is in fact an onboard air compressor, similar to the one found in the 4Runner Trailhunter. And Toyota even gives you a proper cable, which you can run to all 4 tires, meaning this comes equipped from the factory with the option to lower down on all 4s, whether you want to do it for comfort or performance on the trails while off-roading. You can absolutely do that. And then you have your onboard air compressor to reinflate everything when you need to get back on the road. On the opposite side, you have your cubby where it holds your cables, but you also have an AC outlet accessory port, which is again great for overlanding or camping for that additional power. You also have those adjustable clamps that you can see throughout the bed, which help for, of course, tying down other items. And you can even easily remove things like the sport rack if you didn't want it on there. But it's just a nice, big, roomy setup that I think is very well equipped for just about anything that you could need it for. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and power fold our tailgate back up, and that is a quick look at the exterior of the Toyota Tacoma Trailhunter and how it differs from the 4Runner Trailhunter. Underneath, the Trailhunter features 11.2 inches of running ground clearance, but the TRD Pro features 11.5 inches. A very slight difference which comes down to the suspension differences, as the Trailhunter and TRD Pro use the same size wheel and tire package. The Trailhunter features exclusive Old Man Emu forged monotube positive sensitive coilovers with remote reservoir shocks, adding a 1-inch lift up front and half-inch lift in back, utilizing a double wishbone front suspension and multi-link setup in back with front and rear stabilizer bars with stabilizer disconnect mechanism. Also unique to the Trailhunter is the high clearance exhaust, which downturns and exits in the center of the truck. In addition to the front steel skid plate, the Trailhunter features a steel transfer case protector, exclusive steel rear differential protector, and a composite fuel tank protector. It should also be mentioned that the Tacoma is body-on-frame construction built on the new TNGAF platform for Toyota's midsize and full-size SUVs and trucks. Moving on to the inside, the Trailhunter features this cool mineral interior, which is sort of a greenish gray, and I do love that they paired it with this nice contrast stitching that to me just screams outdoorsy, similar to the stuff that you'll find not just like the lace of hiking boots, but also similar to the colors found on a lot of outdoor backpacks, which I think is great. The seats themselves, obviously 2 bucket seats up front. You have some decent bolstering both in the side here and the actual leg bolsterings, which should hold you in place while you're off-roading, even in very rough terrain. And the seats themselves, you can see they're perforated. They have these cool inserts, and they're actually made of Toyota Softex, which is a more durable, resistant kind of all-weather material, which makes total sense for putting that here on the Trailhunter. And one of the things I like about the Trailhunter, and you can see this is where a lot of the cost goes, is it does feel way more special than these standard Tacoma trims. Obviously, they can only change so much in terms of the overall layout, but I mean, look at this door card, for example. You can see the special Trailhunter badging, all of the different materials, all of the work that goes into it to really make it stand out and kind of separate itself from the other vehicles in the Toyota lineup. So I really like the initial impressions and color changes. Now, some interesting parts, for example, like the fact that you actually get the floor mats that are, of course, exclusive, and these are easier to clean by having these pull-out rubber mats. So if you like to get dirty while you're off-roading, those will make it much easier to keep your interior clean. Some other options. For the moment here, you can see this plastic cover on here. Now, this is actually just a placeholder, if you will, and it has a QR code on it and some very cryptic messaging here. And what that actually translates to in the Morse code when you translate it is actually for accessories. You can fit a variety of different accessories here that are available from Toyota. In the 4Runner Trailhunter I had, they actually had the optional lantern, which I believe is a $160 option for this. But you can also get things like a boot brush. You can also get a additional sort of carrying pouch that you can put right there. There's a variety of different options all available from Toyota. Now with that, let's go ahead and climb in so we can see what all we're actually looking at when we power this thing on. So again, just kind of earlier, you can see all of the cool trim that actually runs itself all the way across to the side. Even the Toyota badge, which can be found on other models, has this cool, similar contrast backing the badges. So really the theme is great to see throughout the entire vehicle. One of the first things I want to draw your attention to is this massive TV screen actually smack dab in the middle of the interior. This thing is huge. Now, I can appreciate having a larger infotainment system. There are ones out there that are way too small, but this is, again, as I mentioned earlier, it is like the size of a TV, and it starts to wonder where it becomes too distracting and, does it really need to be this big? That being said, it does feature the current Toyota infotainment system, which is just fantastic. As you can see from the navigation tabs here on the side, it's a touchscreen. It's incredibly easy to use. The navigation system itself, I found, was very easy to use and accurate, unlike some manufacturers' systems. It also has CarPlay and Android Auto if you prefer to use that over anything found on the inside of a vehicle. And it's just pretty easy, quick to use, and it has lots of, obviously, smartphone integration. I do want to point out behind that we actually have the pop-up JBL speaker, also found in the 4Runner, so you can actually use this like a regular Bluetooth speaker system when it's not being used in your Tacoma Trailhunter, and that pairs with the rest of the JBL speakers, which I believe is a 10-speaker sound system in this vehicle with an included subwoofer. That sounds pretty good. It's not the greatest, but it's pretty good, and it does just fine. As we move down below, you can see here is actually going to be your climate controls. You can see we have a heated steering wheel, in addition to actually heated and ventilated seats, which is always nice to have in a vehicle like this. If you're off-roading in hot or cold temperatures, this is prepared for it. And the way that they design the controls as well is very intuitive. You can see they're very big, they have these grips on them, and even these toggle switches, so you can easily adjust everything and don't need to be that precise. And the reason, or thinking for that, I should say, is, let's say you're in the cold or whatever the case is and you have thick gloves on, well, you can easily adapt and mess with these settings without having to take your gloves off. So in that sense, it's, again, very usable as a rugged utility vehicle. You do have your trailer adjustments over here. Down below that, you have some pockets here with a Qi wireless charger, in addition to some USB chargers over here on the side and even an outlet. Here in the middle is obviously that shifter for our automatic transmission. You can go ahead and put it in reverse, which of course brings up your backup cameras, which has lots of options thanks to all those cameras on the exterior. Of course, drive is all the way back, and it does have a sport mode, which you can activate by hitting the shifter over, and that puts it in the manual shift mode, although that's not something I imagine most people will be interested in using. I didn't see any reason to use it anyways in my time with the vehicle. Now below that, we have a lot of exciting features right here in the middle. Obviously, you have your electronic parking brake and your brake hold. Here is actually how you adjust the vehicle into your different four-wheel drive settings. 2 high is going to be your standard drive mode. You push this button in and you can put it in 4 high, and then obviously put it in 4 low when you really need it. And that's an electronically shifting transfer case, which makes it quite easier to shift around. As you're using these other modes, you also get the option for your drive modes and your MTS. MTS is basically drive modes, but specifically for the mountain. So your regular drive modes actually just work you through eco, normal, and sport, kind of as expected, all self-explanatory. But then the MTS modes get a bit more specific. And now you can see you have auto, dirt, sand, mud, and deep snow. And of course, that is used depending on what conditions you're in to better adapt the vehicle. Next to that, we have more of those trailer settings. You actually have a camera button itself. And one of the things I like about the camera button is when you just have the vehicle cruising, maybe you want some help parking, you hit the camera button, and now you have access to these features. And so this can help make sure that you're parked correctly. If you want to see the rocks around you, whatever the case is, you get access to that. Next to those buttons, we of course have the electronically locking rear differential. This can definitely help making sure you don't get stuck hitting up certain mountains. And of course, the disconnecting stabilizer bar. This has been in the Toyota fleet for a while now. Is a great system for off-roading to obviously give you more articulation, which helps in a variety of different circumstances. Over here you have some cup holders, and then you do have a bit of a rear storage pocket, although not huge. And then one really smart component here is this. These cup holders are obviously intended to be used by the back seat, but if you don't have anybody in the back seat, then they act as additional cup holders for you in the front. And so I think this is very, very clever and a great use of the space for essentially dual purpose. Now, moving on in front of the driver, this is pretty self-explanatory. This dash is pretty common amongst other Toyotas. You can actually adjust the dash quite easily, and you can change basically all 3 locations themselves can be adapted to different items, and you can also have multiple different page settings. So let's say you have one that you prefer for off-roading, and then one that you prefer for driving on the street. You can set it up that way. So for example, a trip and your miles per gallon would be great for street driving, but maybe off-road, you want to have either maybe your fluid readings, you might want to have your tire pressures on one side. You can all adjust that. So that's nice and easy there. Obviously, you have your adaptive cruise control. You have a lot of steering wheel adjustments for the infotainment system as well, and all that can be managed easily. This is the same system that Toyota's been using for a while now. Over here on the left side, you have a lot of fun stuff here. You do get a locking gas cap, which is a nice feature in this day and age. You can, of course, control that powered tailgate from over here. You also have the auxiliary power switch for the bed, your traction control, and then you have some of your headlight settings. And then you have your auxiliary outfitter switches. So these can easily be wired up to any additional lights, winches, systems, aftermarket accessories that you might want to add. These are essentially pre-wired so that you don't have to drill in or add any ugly switches to your vehicle. You simply just wire them up to these switches, and now you can easily use them as if they came on the truck from the factory. Below that, we have our really cool features. We have the fog lights and the light bar in addition to the bed lighting. So obviously this vehicle has a lot of lights. Now the way these work is your headlights do have to be on. Once your headlights are on, you can actually turn on the fog lights. The fog lights can actually be that amber or that white, as I mentioned earlier. And so you easily just touch that with a touch of a button, and you can change the colors. Now in order to use a light bar, this is a little bit more tricky. As I mentioned earlier, the brights must be on. Once the brights are on, you can then turn the light bar on. And then you cannot have the fog lights on while the light bar is on. So as much as you would like to create the sun in front of you, Toyota does not let that happen. There may be a workaround in the aftermarket, but at the moment, as it comes from the factory, it doesn't work that way. But you do get access to a lot of different lighting, and obviously that helps in a variety of different situations. The controls for things like your integrated gate or garage functionality are up high, along with your actual power rear window for the rear hatch. And you have nice intuitive lighting, even a storage cubby right here, and of course your sun visors. So it's a pretty nice, pretty intuitive interior, I would say. It really feels very well thought out, and I think for the money it's actually quite good, while having the correct features that you really want from a vehicle like this, especially in the off-road segment. In the back, Toyota continues that mineral theme with the cool contrast outdoorsy stitching. One interesting aspect are, of course, the headrests that you get on the outer seats, and this little headrest here in the middle so it doesn't block your visibility, and your power sliding rear glass window. Toyota did actually carry the theme forward into the door cards, and so those match the rest of the interior. One thing you might notice is that there's no actual vents over here on the side. You do get those door pulls, and then there's no vents here in the middle either. All you get are these USB Type-C chargers, and of course the accessory outlet and these cup holders, which can also helpfully be used for the front. Now, as far as your overall space goes, it's not great. I'm 6 foot even for reference, and my head almost touches the roof. You can see it has slight indentations to try and make it a little bit more roomy here. They do have a light and some speakers back here. But then as far as my knees go, with the seat set up for me up front, you can see my knees actually kind of touch the back of it. So I wouldn't want to sit back here for long extended road trips, but if you have smaller children or just like the additional storage and accessories of the double cab, then you should be just fine. So what's it like to drive the off-roading, overlanding rock crawler that is the Toyota Tacoma Trailhunter? And obviously the Trailhunter 4Runner. Slightly different. One's a truck, one is a SUV, but the truck is pretty awesome. So far we've got into some pretty deep divots that this thing had no problems going into. Obviously I don't want to do anything crazy and damage this. This isn't mine. This one belongs to Toyota. But I've been pretty happy with everything so far. You know, so often if you go on these hardcore rock crawling off-road trails, you'll usually see at least 1 or 2 pickup trucks that smack their bed hard into a rock, and that's not ideal. I don't see that being a real big problem here. Obviously it's something you have to be mindful of, but then you also have the practicality of a pickup truck, which comes in handy really big time, I would say, for the overlanding or general off-road camping community. Maybe you're someone that needs a truck but still wants something that you can easily take off-roading. And the best part is you have this system that's been created here, partnering with Old Man Emu and ARB to develop the Tacoma Trailhunter. And so it's a very well thought out vehicle, right? Sometimes when it comes to these aftermarket accessories, a lot of, there's not always a ton of engineering. Obviously some folks are better than others at engineering certain parts, but getting to work with the manufacturer on a project like this to build this vehicle means that you have a much more robust system with everything designed to work together. And so I think that makes the Trailhunter pretty special in that sense. And if you're someone that doesn't like to modify vehicles yourselves, well, like I said, this comes out of the box basically ready to run, ready to off-road with tons of capability. Now, from a general driving experience, it actually feels, I would say, like a bigger vehicle. And what I mean by that is obviously you have a taller ride height, but then it feels very robust, very aggressive in terms of how it presents itself. And so it feels, dare I say, borderline like a full-size truck. And obviously the Trailhunter is available with the longer beds, which can make it a little bit harder to drive in certain circumstances. If you know you're going on narrower trails that make it harder to turn around, obviously you want the shorter bed. But if that was a deal breaker for you with the TRD Pro, and you can get that extra foot of bed here with the Trailhunter and have a very similar experience while just being a little bit more focused on slightly different things. But I think they are fairly comparable to each other, and I'm not sure that everyone wouldn't be able to necessarily go one way or the other. I think both trucks would suit the majority of most people's needs, so I think that's pretty awesome. The actual drivability, I quite like these newer 4th gen Tacomas. They do check a lot of the boxes for me. I find them to be pleasant to drive, both with the manual transmission, which is unfortunately not available on the Trailhunter. It said you get the 8-speed automatic, which I find to be a smooth shifting transmission. I think the braking, it's quiet on the inside, especially for a truck. Sometimes with the more aggressive off-road wheels and tires, you could get some more noise. That's not a problem here. I think the vehicle's quite comfortable. I like the way everything works on the inside. The big display in the center, while it can be helpful for some folks, I do find it to be a little bit excessive, a kind of maybe a borderline, should I say, distracting, because that thing should essentially be considered a TV at this point. It's insanely large. But the rest of the characteristics are pretty good. On road, the big benefit of all these off-road vehicles is the fact that they are great at just conquering speed bumps too. And so it's such a practical driver both on and off-road. It just makes it great. So if you even wanted to daily this, I wouldn't say that's something you need to shy away from. And all the other luxury amenities just make it a ton of fun. The brake pedal feel is pretty good. The steering isn't as vague and numb as Toyotas of the past, but it's not bad. It's certainly not hard to use by any means at all either. And so I don't mind the steering. The visibility is quite good. The A-pillar, you don't have a handle here on the driver's side, and so it's actually pretty narrow. I will say sometimes with the mirrors and kind of the other setup of the vehicle, it can be a little bit hard to see enemies, especially if you're in a particularly sketchy area. Fortunately, you do have the camera systems on this particular vehicle that does help with setting up some of those miscellaneous items that are available. Now, real quick, there is something I want to show you. And the way I want to show that to you to see if you can hear it, obviously we'll mic it up separately, but if we actually lower the passenger side window, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the blow-off induction turbo noise from this turbocharged hybrid powertrain. I know a lot of people have their skepticisms on these new iForce Max engines that are just basically across Toyota's powertrain lineup at this point, but Toyota's been building turbocharged and hybrids for a while now, and so I think they kind of expected to exist in this form. But man, this thing's fun. It's not overly fast per se, but it never feels short on power, and I think that in big hands is due to the 465 pound-feet of torque that this thing carries with it. That is a lot of power. So maybe it's not straight line speed fast, but it'll certainly maintain its momentum once you get it up and going. It has no problem going uphill. We had to drive up to 7,000 feet up here to get to northern Arizona. Never had any issues, always pulling its weight, accelerating whenever it needed to. So it's very, very comparable. My one letdown, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, is the fuel economy. This thing is an EPA rated 22 city, 25 highway. And yet, as I'm sitting here driving this thing, I cannot for the life of me get it to exceed 15. Now, obviously, on the way back from 7,000 feet to Phoenix, I expect there to be a huge gain, but I don't really expect it to break 17 or 18 on the way down, even with a lot of coasting. There are still some uphill sections as it goes into the valleys and back out, but I just don't understand how I can't eke out more fuel economy out of this thing. You might have a different experience. Let me know down below what your experience has been with the iForce Max. Could you get a lot of fuel economy out of it? It could just be my lead foot, but even on the highway, I would expect the fuel economy to improve a bit more. That to me is kind of the biggest questionable letdown. Not that you expect a truck to have good gas mileage, it's just one of those funky trade-offs. But with that, that's the end of the video. What a truck this is. Obviously, it's a lot of money. It's more than twice the price of a base model Toyota Tacoma. So you can literally have two base model Tacomas. Obviously, those are only two-wheel drive. Or you could have one Trailhunter. And that is a heck of a value proposition that you have to ask yourself, Now, obviously, you get a lot of truck here for the money. You also get the TRD Pro models, and so you kind of have to ask yourself what's in your best option for you personally, what suits your lifestyle the best, and that'll really give you your answer as to what to go with. But the Trailhunter is one heck of a truck, and I think you do get your money's worth as far as earning its spot up there next to the TRD Pro. As to which one you go with, I genuinely don't think you can go wrong one way or the other. It just depends. Like, I think a big deal proposition for me is actually the snorkel. You lose 3 horsepower, but it sounds so awesome. If anything, it's kind of a giggle machine. Obviously, it looks aggressive from the outside. The TRD Pro is cool as a desert runner. You have that 3 more horsepower, but you're only offered with the 5-foot bed. They're both kind of similar. They have the same powertrains. Both are 4-wheel drive. Both get all of those options. And so I think both trucks would suit everybody's lifestyle. It's almost just like offering the same thing, but in 2 different flavors is kind of how I look at it. It just really comes down to personal preference. But you let me know what you think down below. That's the end of the video. If you enjoyed it and can leave me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. Consider getting subscribed for more content like this in the future. And of course, comment down below. Let me know what you think. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.